Welcome, everyone. We're just getting started here on our post-Christmas live stream. Did I say Christmas? There's no T in that. Post-Christmas live stream. We're going to let some folks come in. As you're coming into the stream here, if you could put your name and where you're watching from tonight, that would be great. And tonight, I really don't have an agenda for this call. But there is a process that I'd like to share with you that I think might help as we're coming through on the other side of yesterday and even the holidays. Obviously, we still have New Year's left to come here, but I wanted to come in here after Christmas just to kind of talk about the day and see how it was, how it went. And so there's a process that I learned a few years ago by one of my coaches. His name is he's a retired Green Beret. His name is Scott Mann. He's here down here in Tampa. I've worked with Scott for years now, and he shared this process with me that they use in the military that I have found very helpful even in my grief. And it's whenever I am going to an event or there's something that's happening related to my grief, work, or any type of event, even if I'm navigating a holiday, I use this tool because it helps me to kind of figure out where I am afterwards and what I can do to help myself in the future for the next time that this happens. And it's called an after action review. And I know it sounds really technical and programmatic, but bear with me on this because I think it's going to be very helpful tonight as we kind of walk through this. And so I'm not expecting a large group of people here tonight. So right now there's about 5 people that are on the live stream. I'm hoping more will join. I think they will. Hey, Melissa, welcome from Virginia. And let's see, Stephanie is here again. Hey, Stephanie, nice to see you or see you in the chat here. But tonight we're going to talk about this 3-step process to looking at how yesterday went for you. And this is a really powerful process because it'll help you navigate, not only kind of take a look at what went right yesterday, but also what didn't go so right. More importantly, what do you want to change for the next time you are going to an event that around a holiday? Because the holidays don't stop, right? They come up. We've got Valentine's Day coming up here in about a month and a half. We still have New Year's to get through. So I'm jumping the gun here a little bit, but we've got New Year's, we've got Valentine's Day, we've got Easter, then we've got Memorial Day and Independence Day, right? And the cycles over and over again every year, of course. And so, and we have anniversaries and birthdays and other, dates that are significant to us. And so a lot of the same emotions are going to come up each time. So if you're just joining us, welcome everybody. If you could put your name in the chat and where you're watching us from tonight, that'd be great. I'm just talking about a process here to help us kind of do a quick debrief over yesterday, because I'm sure for a lot of folks in here, it didn't go the way you planned. I'm just going to say it didn't go the way you planned. Maybe it went better than you planned. Maybe it didn't. But we're going to glean some wonderful tips and advice tonight from our collective experience of how we navigated yesterday. And I invite you that if you see something in the chat that stands out to you, write it down, because it may be something that'll help you in the future. I have taken so many notes since we started these live streams just a few last week. And well, this is the 3rd in the series. I'm just grateful that everybody's here and that we're all kind of coming together. Why? Because we can support each other. And so we're going to talk tonight about this process called an after action review. And again, I'm sorry that it sounds so programmatic and technical, but bear with me on this one because I know it's going to be very helpful. So let's see here. We got Stephanie in here. We got Janet from Brisbane, Australia. That's awesome. Shelly is here. Hello, Shelia. And Stephanie is from Queens. Excellent. Shelly is from West Virginia. Random Hodgepodge. I love that name. Watching from Houston. Nancy's here. Hey, Nancy. Denise Murray is from Philadelphia, and Mary is in here. Yeah, I get that, Mary. You don't want to start a year without them. I get it. You always plan on where we go, what we do. We started talking in August, and it all ended. And I'm so sorry, Mary. I know this isn't easy in any way, shape, or form. And yesterday, again, for those of you who are just joining, yesterday may have been really, really challenging and really difficult. But I'm also hoping that there were some, and I can guarantee you, I can tell you that there was at least one positive out of yesterday. It doesn't have to be huge, my friends. It doesn't have to be huge. It could have been that you got out of bed. That was the positive. That's okay. It could have been that you got yourself out of the house and you didn't think you would. So that's actually what we're going to start with tonight. This call is going to be kind of broken up into three parts. The first part is going to be talking about what went well yesterday. And so that's what we're going to focus on for right now. Okay. And bear with me. You're going to want to stay through the whole hour here because we're going to be talking about how we're going to complete the circle on this entire process. And so the first step is to here's what I'm inviting you to do. Please take a couple of minutes and think about yesterday as a whole. Again, if it was so difficult, I get it. Again, I'm so thankful that you're here tonight because this is good. This is what we need to hear. But any positive moments that you had yesterday, please think about them and type them in the chat. Any positivity. I'll start. While you guys are thinking about this and writing, I'm going to share my positives. So I was able to sleep in yesterday. There's some folks in town that are visiting, my friends here, their family, and this is the first Christmas in probably last 25 years that I have not been with my family in some form or fashion. And it was strange, but I was able to sleep in. And when I came downstairs yesterday, breakfast was there already made. And I thought that was a positive. I don't know. I felt like that was going to help me at some point. Another positive was that I was able to get through the day. I cried a couple of times, but I was able to get through the day and actually had quite a few laughs last night as we played a couple of games that I had never played before. Another positive was that we had some incredible food last night for dinner. That was just like, oh, so good. And so little things like that. I received some gifts that I wasn't expecting. I'm just going to tell you, I got some hair care. I'm grateful. Okay. It was beard care too. All right. But anyway, so there were a lot of positives yesterday. And again, they don't have to be monumental positives, but let's start reading through what folks are writing in here. So let's see. Liz wrote, yesterday was so much worse than I thought. I thought it would be just like in her day since my daughter just passed in October, and I always said, and it was particularly hard. So Liz, I get that. I'm sure it was so very difficult. Tell me one positive thing that happened yesterday. There must be one. And I guess even if it was you getting out of bed, then that is okay as a positive. But the littlest thing can be positive here. Let's see here. Okay, so random hodgepodge. Again, I love that name. Didn't eat junk food and I walked around the patio for a few minutes. That's perfect. That is a positive. Maybe that's something that you normally don't do. And so for you to get outside and walk around the patio, just be outside in nature for a few minutes, that's okay. So that's a positive. Excuse me. Let's see. Melissa wrote, my sons and I fixed dinner together, which was the first since my husband and their father passed. I'm so glad you had that moment, Melissa. I'm sure it wasn't easy because obviously your husband was usually there with you. And so, but I'm glad that you had that moment. That moment of closeness is a shining light in a dark day, if it feels that way. So really, really good. I'm glad, and thank you for sharing that. Okay, so I did absolutely nothing yesterday, and people made me feel weird about it, but I had a little peace doing what I wanted to do and not what others thought I should feel or do. Shelly, I love that. That's really powerful and that's really strong. First, holidays without loved ones, it's going to feel clunky. And that's probably like not a great word to use, but it's clunky. It's not smooth. Probably some awkwardness in there, but for you to feel like, you know what, I didn't want to do anything and that was the way it was going to be, good on you. You actually took care of yourself yesterday, and that's okay to do that. So, really good work on that. So Nancy wrote here, I did go to my daughter and son-in-laws and granddaughter, and I actually had a very relaxing time, laughed and played games. I love that, Nancy. I'm hoping that surprised you. And anybody that's finding the positives, I'm hoping that surprised you in some way. Maybe for some of you, you feel like you shouldn't have been laughing or having fun. There's oftentimes we feel guilty if we are smiling, if we're grieving, because for some reason that means that we didn't love our loved one enough. Because how could we be having a good time? There's nothing further from the truth. We are emotional people and we feel all of the emotions at any time. An emotion does not mean you are a bad person. Being angry doesn't mean you're a bad person. Smiling and being happy doesn't mean you're a bad person, that you didn't love them. Being frustrated, being crying doesn't mean you're a bad person and that you didn't love them. Every emotion is valid. It doesn't matter what it is. I hope that helps some. And so I'm glad, Nancy, that you were able to go and hang out and have some fun and smile. That's wonderful. What a great positive there. So let's see. JJ wrote, my positives were woven into the events of Christmas Day. Yes, there were tears, but also sunshine. Awesome. That's really good. I felt my mom and dad close to be in the spirit. My daughter gave me a terrific book called Grief is Love. That's wonderful. I mean, I'm hoping that warmed your heart, JJ, in so many ways. I really do, because that really warmed my heart reading that, and that you had some, you experienced, the light was shining through the dark clouds. So really, really good. And thank you for sharing that. Let's see here. Martin wrote, yesterday was harder than I expected. I'm sure it was, Martin. The first Christmas without my husband in 48 years. Talked to family and friends on the phone, and we went for a walk and had a good cry in the park. You know what? That's okay. Every emotion, again, as you feel it, it's okay as it happens. We're metabolizing our grief, and on Christmas Day, it is amplified. Emotions are amplified on holidays and anniversaries, and it can feel really difficult when we're navigating these things. But I'm glad you had your positives there, Martin. Hey, Toby, good to see you. Welcome. All right, so Liz wrote back, I did spend the day with family. I was surrounded by love and support. I love that, Liz. And again, knowing how hard it was, um, that is not your fault in any way, shape, or form. Anybody that's listening, it's not your fault, and it's not wrong to feel what you felt yesterday, no matter what that is. Even if the entire day was an absolute disaster, even if the entire day was incredibly better than you ever expected, there's nothing wrong with that. You're processing your grief. And so what I like to do is what we're doing right now is this kind of taking a look afterwards and being, okay, what went well? What went well? This is the first part of it. So this is where we're working on right now. And so I'm so glad, Liz, that you were able to spend that time with your family and you were surrounded by love and support. And if you folks are just joining us, we're talking about what went well yesterday for you. So right now, positives of yesterday. I'm going to get to some other pieces of this kind of review of yesterday, but please write in the chat what went well for you yesterday. Let's see here. Denise said, I accepted an invitation from my high school friend for Christmas dinner. Awesome. Spent the day reminiscing about old times, made it through the day on good memories and no tears for that time. That's great, Denise. And you know what? If you got home and you fell to your knees and you cried for 2 hours, I'm proud of you for being able to do what you needed to do yesterday and doing as much as you could do. And that goes for everybody on this call. We do the best we can. There's not going to be anything perfect about it. we're going to navigate the day the way we need to navigate the day. And the whole point of me doing these live streams and sharing all this with you is to show you that you made it through yesterday, as hard as it was. You made it through. And today is another day that we have to walk through grief. Today is another day that we have to get up out of bed and continue to feel the pain, continue to process the grief, and continue on. I just did a video today that I just posted earlier today. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it. It's really about how do you approach the new year? And it's less about leaving your loved one behind, but it's about carrying them with you in your heart. Because honestly, they're always going to be with you in your heart. But again, I invite you to watch that video if you have some time. So let's see here. Martin said, will the same feelings come up on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day? I'm sure some of those. That's a great question, Martin. I think some of the feelings will come up on New Year's Day. Why? Because it's another holiday that we're navigating. And it's so close from Christmas to it's literally 1 week away. And so this is why I'm so glad that you're here tonight, because we're going to talk about how you navigate New Year's Eve. All right. So the first part of this is kind of looking at okay, what went right yesterday? And that's what we're talking about right now. And I'm going to get to the other pieces here in a couple of minutes. So let's see here. Liz says, I just cried a lot because I miss her so much. Absolutely, Liz. And it's okay. You know, I cried yesterday too. I came upstairs after I had breakfast and I sat down in my chair and I had a moment, probably about 10 minutes. I just sat up here privately in my office and I cried because it's 10 years since Zoe died. And it was almost like too unbelievable to be believable. And I'm sure you're still feeling that. Now, that's not to scare you to say 10 years later, I'm still going to be in this really horrible place. I have moments now. I have more moments when I feel Zoe in here than I have me on my knees crying. And grief is something, it's the love. I still love Zoe so much. I love her as much as the day she was born. And I'm so glad that I get to carry that because that love never dies. And that goes for anybody that we've lost. Let's see here. Grendel said, hey, Grendel, welcome. I was surrounded by family, my mother, nieces, and nephews. I certainly cried yesterday morning. And when I returned home, this is my first time without him in 33 years. And I'm so glad and happy that you were able to go and do something yesterday for yourself. And you, I'm sure, as everybody here is listening, that you were kind of checking in with yourself every couple of minutes. How am I doing? Am I okay? Right? I mean, this is an internal dialogue that's happening too, but you're talking to yourself. How am I doing? Okay. Am I going to lose it? Am I doing okay? Am I holding on? What's happening here? It's okay. These first few steps in grief, and I'm talking first few months, these are first few steps, they're going to be a little clunky. Okay. And I'm going to make this little contrast here. The other broadcast, I was talking about how, physical wounds, we can see them and they take time to heal and nobody ever says anything to you about them. And we certainly don't say to somebody, hey, why aren't you healing faster? Right. But emotional wounds are different. They're unseen. We can't see them. And so they may take longer to heal. And just because they're unseen does not mean they're not there. And if you guys remember, kids, when if you've had kids or you've seen kids, babies, for example, that are 6-8 months old, they start to stand up and they wobble, right? And then all of a sudden poof, they'll fall on their butt. What does a baby do when they do that? Excuse me. A baby will turn around, right itself, and try again. As adults, we have spent so much time in our life hearing certain things about how we should be healing, hearing things that we should be doing differently. Nobody can tell the baby how to stand up and walk. We can guide them. We can hold their hands. We can walk with them, but we can't walk for them. And when a baby falls down, And the baby gets right back up and tries again. Now, if we want to call fairness here, I wish I was wearing a 5-pound cushion on my butt when I fell down, right? I mean, it wouldn't hurt so much, but I think you guys get my point here. It's okay if we fall. And I know this is hard. So let's continue on here. Yes, see, guys, we made it through. That's right, JJ, you did. Absolutely. And you're right, Liz. It is totally unbelievable. Michelle, kids came over for an hour and a half. My first Xmas since my husband died. Spent it alone. I'm so sorry, Michelle. I'm glad your kids came over for a little bit. It's something. It's a positive. It's not ideal. None of yesterday was ideal. And so, but we do the best we can with what we've got. And during these times, for right now, it's going to be enough until we continue to work through our grief and find ways to get back up. And so Esteban writes here, I felt ashamed for having an actual good day with my family and friends. Is that normal? Esteban, thank you, by the way. Look, we're emotional beings, period. I just mentioned this a couple minutes ago, but we're emotional beings. And emotions, it doesn't matter what the emotion is. They're all valid. They're all normal. And it's absolutely normal. I look, the week after Zoe died, my house was full. My dad and my uncle were making jokes about something, and I found myself laughing so hard I was wheezing. This was days after my daughter died. And I stopped and I'm like, what am I doing? Like I kind of pissed at myself. How can I be laughing right now when she's not here? And everybody's here because she's not here. Right? So please know that no matter how you felt yesterday, no matter how your emotions went, not one single emotion was invalid. Happiness, sadness, anger, frustration, depression, loneliness, anxiety. It doesn't matter. Whatever you felt is valid. And so, as you probably noticed, you probably went through quite a few of the emotions throughout the day. It was like a little bit of a roller coaster yesterday, I'm sure. Oh, let's see here. Celia wrote, today makes 10 months. My husband passed, but making it through yesterday helped me with today. I'm so glad to hear that, Celia. Yeah, I know. It seems like the lead up to the holidays is almost harder than the day itself, but not saying the day isn't hard. But now that we're on the other side of the day, there's something to be proud of for being able to say, I made it through the day. It's a little thing. It's a little win in this grief journey. And it's part of the process of getting back up. And I can tell you that from here on out, the next set of holidays that you go through will be a little bit easier. And then it starts to get to a point where it's actually easier than you thought it was going to be. Easy in the sense that it hurts, but you're able to move through it with a little bit more grace. So let's see. Michelle wrote, she's just thanking JJ. Stephanie wrote an Instagram post remembering Xmas music my mother filled the house with when I was little. Teared up a lot, but the memory made you smile. I love that, Stephanie. That's it. That's it right there. When you can smile, when you can feel that warmth because of something that was beautiful about your loved one, that is keeping them some close. That is the light in the darkness of yesterday. And Marcine wrote, all of my family are all in other states and I did not send any gifts. I spoke on the phone with a couple of people and thanked them for the gifts they sent. I felt guilt for not sending gifts and so very sad. Well, first of all, I love the positive in here, Marcine, that you spoke on the phone with a couple of people and you thanked them for the gifts that sent. That is enough. You don't owe anybody an explanation. You don't owe anybody a justification for how you handled yesterday. I'm sorry that you felt guilty for that in the sense that it's normal, but people understand that you're struggling right now with your grief. And if anybody was expecting you to send something, I don't know. That might be a little harsh. I'd be kind of like, is that really necessary? Because I don't know. every once in a while, there's going to be somebody that's going to kind of come out of left field and say something. It's like, what? Okay, I don't even know where that came from, but that was not helpful. And so we don't need to beat ourselves up, is my point. We don't need to beat ourselves up. But I get it when we're struggling, because we just want to feel like we did something right by our loved one, right? You love them enough. You still love them. That's never going to go away. That's never going to go away. I really appreciate everybody sharing these positives from yesterday, because it's part of this process that I'm sharing with you tonight. And here's what I'd like to do for this next piece, because I feel like this could be a huge list. I'd like you to tell me one thing, just one thing, that didn't go right yesterday for you. Maybe it's the most glaring thing that didn't go right for you yesterday, but just one, okay? I want to make sure that we get this whole process down on this call tonight, and so I want to make sure that we're moving through this pretty well. But I do want to hear. So we talked about what went right. Now we're going to talk about one thing that didn't go right yesterday. So please type that in the chat. And Dorothy wrote here, I lost my sister in October. She was my everything, and it's been so hard on us. God will make it get better. Yeah. So Dorothy, thank you for sharing that. I'm so sorry to hear about your sister, because I'm sure that it's just doesn't make any sense, right? It's unfair in a lot of ways. But tell me one thing, and this is for everybody on the call here. Tell me one thing that didn't go right yesterday. I'm going to enjoy a little bit of a candy cane. Why? Oh, just feel like it. Okay. So Shelia wrote here, she cooked and she could not enjoy it. Shelia, was it kind of like just going through the motions yesterday? I mean, honestly, getting out of bed, getting dressed, didn't feel a thing. Tell me if I'm right here, but didn't feel a thing, didn't want to do anything. Maybe some people were coming over. Yeah, she writes, yes, absolutely. Maybe some people were going to come over, and, every 5 minutes looking at the clock, every 5 minutes checking to see how time's gone by a little faster. It's a tough day, but I'm proud of each and every one of you for getting through it. All right, so let's continue on here. I can't say anything went wrong. I was just beyond exhausted and could not wait to go to bed. Oh my gosh, Liz, that is perfect. Bear with me. You are so right. I felt so exhausted yesterday. What a great way of putting that. It is exhaustion because of the mental energy it took to make it through the day. Thank you for saying that. That was huge. And you're absolutely right. So maybe that was it. Maybe it was just being exhausted mentally and emotionally. Let's see here. Having Christmas at my house, I had to get out, so I went to my son's because I always did Christmas at my house. Okay, Dorothy, I appreciate that, because what didn't go right yesterday is that you just needed to get out of the house, because every time you guys did Christmas, it was at your house, and this year was different. So that's okay. You navigated that difficult piece of yesterday very well. It was you took care of yourself. You did what you needed to do in order to get through the day. And I know, again, it wasn't ideal, but you made something happen that helped you in a very little bit way. So really good. Thank you for sharing that. So for Grindel, not having him there, his absence, not having to cook a big meal, and him to tell me what he wanted, I was numb. Yeah, I think that's it, Grindel. You just it's just the absence is probably one of the hardest pieces of the day, and you just wish it wasn't this way, of course. But I really do get that. Yeah, so Random Hodgepodge wrote, 42 years together. I didn't want the day at all. Yeah, I get that. You just wanted it to go by. Didn't even want the day to even happen. Obviously, it did, but you made it through. So thank you for sharing that. Melissa says, I've turned to drinking since my husband passed. I drink most of the day just to try to get through it. And I'm for you, Melissa, I'm sure this is really hard. And if I can invite you to reach out to somebody in your local area that you can have a conversation with. There are people you can meet with, and I can tell you that nobody would ever judge how you're processing your grief. It's hard, but sometimes we need a little extra help. And there's nothing wrong with asking for that little bit of extra help. And obviously, this has been really hard for not just you, but everybody that's on this call. And so if you can find a resource locally to you, and it doesn't have to be anything that you don't want it to be in terms of, I'm not suggesting that you turn to your church. Maybe that is the where you want to go. Maybe there is a local community center that offers some programs for you to sit in on, like get-togethers. Maybe there is a counselor or a therapist or a coach. And the reason I'm recommending local is because when we're really struggling, there's something about sitting across from somebody face to face in the same room and being able to connect with somebody in that same space. It really does help. And so I'm sorry that it's been so hard for you, Melissa, and there's no judgment from me or anybody else here. It is hard. And so Shelley said, I told everyone I just could not do it, needed to be alone to keep from stressing out. And that's perfect, Shelley. You did what you had to do on that day, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. So JJ said, for me, I felt so guilty in not wanting to talk to my sister-in-law on the phone for Christmas. I just didn't have the capacity to deal with some of her silly comments about grief. You know what, JJ? Good for you. You took care of yourself. You set a boundary in a way. You set a boundary in the way that you needed to. And that's okay. And so I understand feeling guilty because you normally speak to her on Christmas, it sounds like. And if you didn't have the capacity, you didn't have the capacity. And you don't owe that to anybody else. So Martin wrote, nothing went wrong yesterday, but I woke up this morning feeling queasy due to an emotional day yesterday. Yeah. I mean, gosh, it is like you woke up this morning and it's almost like you have an emotional hangover, you know? It is exhausting. I went to bed early last night. I don't know about you guys. By like 9:30, I was in bed and my eyes were getting heavy because yesterday was tough. And so, but I got to the end of the day and I'm like, you know what? I made it. It's still not easy, guys. But I can manage through it now because of the tools that I put in, that I use every single day. The diaphragmatic breathing, I do journaling, I do reading, and everybody's different in how they do that. Let's see here. Esteban says, nothing bad happened, but I felt nervous and anxious. Yeah, that's appropriate too, Esteban. There's nothing not normal about that, by the way. Those are all normal feelings that we have. Anxiousness, nervousness, feeling really sad, not even wanting to get out of bed, keeping the shades drawn all day long. And Marcine wrote, for me, it's just a total roller coaster of emotions. Yep. How can I feel so many emotions in such a short time? Welcome to grief. Here's the good thing I would say about that. While it feels very unsettling when we are cycling through emotions quickly, this process of grief is not linear. The best way I can describe it, it's kind of like a big ball of string that is just rolled together. You know that scene in Christmas Vacation when Chevy Chase hands that ball of lights to Rusty and it looks like a big knot? That's kind of like what grief is. And the only way we're going to untangle that ball is one light at a time. One little piece of the ball, one little piece of the string from this big ball at a time. And there's going to be knots in there. There's going to be clumps in there. There's going to be pieces where we can unroll several, inches of the string. But it's not linear. It's not as though the path is from start to finish and you're good. It's not as though you start grief on day 1 and by day 10 or month 5, you're good. You are moving in and out. It's like slalom. You are moving in and out of that grief, up and down, side to side. It's almost nauseating and it's exhausting having to go through those emotions. So you're absolutely right on that, Marcine. It's just a roller coaster. And, it's normal to feel those emotions. But on these days when it's amplified, especially holidays like this and other important dates throughout the year, those emotions can get amplified. And it's so important when your emotions get amplified. And I shared this the other night on the call. There is a simple exercise that you can actually use to help you with your emotions. Because at that point, you're not grounded, right? When you don't feel grounded, that's when it can really mess with you, almost feel like you're going to go into a panic attack. But you can stop that by doing some diaphragmatic breathing. And I'll show you guys again what that is. So, again, don't make fun of my stomach here. But diaphragmatic breath, I always put a hand on my chest and a hand on my belly. Why? Because when I breathe in, I'm exhaling my belly here. I'm inhaling, sorry. I'm pushing out my belly. And then when I exhale, I'm pushing my belly to my spine. Because when I'm inhaling, all the air is coming into my lower part of my lungs, which is right under my rib cage here. And then I squeeze my belly to my spine, get rid of all that nasty air, and I inhale. And I stick my belly out because all the air is coming in. I'm not pushing my belly out. That's what's happening with my lungs. If you do 3 to 5 lower body breaths, it'll tell your brain, it's okay. I can be calm. And the challenge is that when we're breathing up here with these muscles and in our upper chest, we're only getting about 20% of the oxygen into our bodies. It's telling your brain to stay in that heightened emotion state. When you do a diaphragmatic breath, it tells your brain it's okay. It's okay for now. So please try a couple of those diaphragmatic breaths if you're really having a hard time. So Liz wrote, actually Melissa wrote, I went through yesterday like it was just another day. I didn't wish anybody a Merry Christmas, nor did they. Melissa, you got through the day and it's okay the way that it happened. I know it wasn't ideal and I'm sure it wasn't at all in a way good, but you made it through. And I can tell you just from experience that future holidays won't feel like this. It's still going to be hard, but they won't feel like this. So Liz wrote, I'm surprised how much anxiety plays a role in this. That's one thing I never heard about or experienced. I've had so much anxiety. I'm glad you said that, Liz, because that's something that's come up for me too in the last 10 years. Maybe I've always been anxious to some degree, but it shows up differently for me now. Every once in a while, I will start to sweat profusely. And I know that's an anxiety response that I'm having. And so that's not something that's ever happened before. But it usually happens in stressful situations now. It happens if I'm going to be doing any speaking or coaching or training. Sometimes I have to change my shirt because I sweat so much and I don't like it, but that is an anxiety response. And so here's what I'm doing about that. I'm actually sitting down with a therapist this week to talk about it because it's really starting to bother me. But it really hasn't bothered me up till now. But early grief can make you feel really anxious, and you don't want that anxiety to lead to a panic attack. And so definitely practice those lower diaphragmatic breaths and go slow with them. You don't do them fast. You those exhale breaths, those let go breaths that you just feel all the tension just leave your body. That's where you want to get to. The therapy, the release is on the exhale. And so you might have to do 5 or 10 of those lower body breaths to get to that release. That's when you know your system is starting to get regulated. Let's see here. Stephanie writes, "Thank you, Liz. I felt that too, and I tried to power through, and I ended up blowing a fuse trying to figure out my husband's new coffee maker. I took that as a sign to sit down and breathe." I'm glad you said that, Stephanie, because I remember it was about 5 months after Zoe died, and I don't, I'm not condoning this, but I was washing dishes, and I don't know what hit me, but the pan that I had in my hand, I just threw it. I don't know what came over me. It was just everything all at once. I grabbed that thing and I chucked it, and I missed breaking my front window of my house by about 5 inches. And the pan was built pretty well because it only had a ding on the side, but that's not the point. It's that, this finding healthy ways of releasing our emotions, albeit through crying or exercise or writing in our journals or the breath work is really helpful. And there's times when the emotions are going to bottom out and you're not going to feel anything. And there's going to be times when the emotion spikes. And it could be that you're laughing really hard. It could be that you're crying really hard. It could be that you're so angry you could break something in half, right? And so it's those moments when we've got to regulate our emotions by doing something like walking or going for a walk, like I said, or doing the diaphragmatic breathing, because those really help to regulate your emotions. So my one son, who's a minister, hasn't spoken to me since his dad died, and I'm so sorry about that, Michelle. I'm sure that's just very confusing in a lot of ways, and so each of us deals with our grief in our own way. And we only wish we didn't have to do that, right? We wish we had the manual on how to walk through this process and to help our loved ones do the same thing. I've had challenges with my family from time to time as well. Zoe's older sister, her brother, Zoe's mom. I mean, it's hard. This is hard on families. And so we all deal with it differently. And so hopefully with some time, Michelle, there's be some capacity for you to reconnect with your son. Shelley said, I've had a feeling of waiting, but I have no idea what I'm waiting on. Is it normal? Can you elaborate a little bit more what you mean by waiting? Sorry, sorry, I need my glasses. I have had a feeling of waiting, but I have no idea what I'm waiting on. Okay, yeah. What do you mean by waiting? Can you elaborate on that a little bit, Shelley? While she's typing that in, I'd like to talk about the last piece of this process. So the first piece of this process that we talked about was what went right yesterday. And thank you all for sharing some of those positive moments. It was something, right? It was some light in the darkness of the day. And there's always something that goes okay. We just tend to focus on the things that are really hurting. We tend to be pulled towards the pain because it does hurt. And again, I'm not invalidating any of that. But then we also talked about something that wasn't going so well yesterday. And I appreciate how you folks shared that it's exhausting and that maybe not something didn't go right. You just didn't feel like doing anything, right? You feel like numb. So, but I'd like to remind everybody that you made it through the day, and that's the best we can do. But the last piece of this puzzle, and especially as we're approaching New Year's Day in a few days here, that's another holiday that we're going to have to navigate. The year is changing. There's going to be some feelings of our loved one being left behind because we're entering a new year, but they're not coming with us. I'd like for you to share with me now in the chat, what do you want to change based on yesterday's experience? How do you want to approach New Year's Eve and New Year's Day that's coming up? Based on, like, what do you want to do differently? How's that? What do you want to do differently for New Year's Day or New Year's Eve as that's approaching? Just tell me in the chat what you think would work there. So like waiting on something. Okay, so while you guys are writing that, Shelly has said, so I feel like I've had a feeling of waiting, but I'm not sure what I'm waiting on. So, I think this feeling of waiting on something, that's a really good way of putting it too. Now that I think about it, I think I know what you mean. It's a very unsettling feeling, Shelly. Like we have to be somewhere, or like you said, we're waiting on something like it's something's not complete, right? That and tell me if I'm wrong on this, but it doesn't feel like things are complete. And I feel like when we lose a loved one, there are a lot of things that are probably left unsaid. There are a lot of things that are left undone. It's, if I could put a parallel to this, it's like being at work and you want to get that project done, but you're waiting on somebody to do their piece in order to finish it so you can get it done. In this case, I'm wondering if you're waiting on some sort of completed, like, I could be wrong here. So tell me if I'm in the right vein here. Maybe leave the house and go with people. Okay. All right. I feel like I'm waiting on something. So with going out with others, I mean, it took me 5 months before I would go out with friends from work. And that was really hard that first time. I didn't want to do it. When I got done with work, I wanted to go home and put the shades down and just leave me alone. Like, leave me alone till tomorrow. I just wanted to isolate, which wasn't great because it made it worse for me. So what I could have been doing was connecting with others, maybe through Facebook groups and things like that. But I don't think I approached it in a way that was helping me. So, but you will do things on your own timeline, and that's okay. And so when you feel strong enough and able enough and willing enough to go out and to spend some time with others, then it'll happen at the right time. And if you say, yeah, I'm going to go, and then you change your mind, that's okay too. Eventually you'll get there. And so, but little steps at a time. You don't have to take giant steps. You don't have to go from not going anywhere to going on a 5-day trip either, right? That may be too much of a jump. Maybe start with a day trip somewhere. Maybe start with a couple of hours over at some friend's house and then come back. I think knowing that you have the capacity to go and come and go as you need to, that may help. So let's see here. So what are we going to change differently next time? I don't keep, Miss Melissa writes, I don't keep a journal, but I keep my husband's cell phone on. I text him every day and let him know how my day went and how I feel. I like that, Melissa. I wrote Zoe many letters. Some of them are on my notes that I keep on my phone. I still keep her number in my phone, even though the phone number has been transitioned away. It was really hard to shut off her number. But that comes with time. There's no timeline. You don't have to rush it. But you do what you need to do in order to kind of help you through the day. There's no wrong way to approach this. There's no one right way to navigate your grief except for the one way that works for you. So please remember that. So Judy O wrote, I understand what Shelley means. For me, I'm waiting on feeling like me again and knowing I will never get there. So Judy, I'm going to challenge you on that one. It's not your fault how you feel. I'm not invalidating how you feel. When I say I'm going to challenge you, here's what I mean by that. That um, feeling like yourself is right now. You don't feel like yourself. That's right now. And when you're really struggling with your grief, it can feel like it's going to be never ending. In fact, it's going to feel like it's going to get harder before it gets easier, and maybe it will. But at some point, you're going to emerge from that abyss of grief. We are naturally pulled towards balance. Humans do not like to be out of balance, which is why it feels so awkward and hard when we're struggling with grief, because that's not our normal state. And so now, last week or the other day, I gave an example of what happens with our heart, when we go through the loss. And I used a milk jug, and I have a video on my channel that can kind of explain what happens. But when we are with our loved one, we are whole. Our heart is a whole, smooth plastic milk jug. Okay, that's our heart. But then when something happens to our loved one, that gets crushed. Our heart gets crushed and broken. Now, over time, and this is what my point is on this one, Judy, is that over time, we slowly regain some of the capacity in our heart. We slowly regain more and more capacity until our heart is healed as much as it's going to heal. Now, while you might not feel the same, you are changed in your grief. We are all transformed in our grief. We become stronger for having gone through this process of having to navigate the worst thing that anybody has to navigate. And while we don't want ever to be in this place, we don't really have a choice in the matter except to go forward, but you don't have to do it alone. And you're right. The one thing you are absolutely right is that feeling like you again. And I don't know if we ever feel like we did before we lost our loved one, if that makes sense. But I feel like we become who who our heart allows us to become in the process of grief, if that makes some sense. So when I say I challenge you on this one, I please know that while it feels like you're never going to feel better again, there are better days ahead. And it may take some time to get there, but again, you're not alone. And I appreciate you jumping on this call tonight, because that shows that you do want to get to a place where the pain isn't hurting so much. But I do appreciate you sharing that. So JJ writes, in terms of like what she would change for the next holiday, I guess I would try to keep the day much more casual and keep it much more simple, so I don't have that emotional hangover that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, that's okay. That's it. It's kind of taking your experience from yesterday and bringing that into the next holiday and be like, okay, that didn't work out. I'm not doing that again. So I'm going to keep it casual. I'm not going to overdo it. If I feel like just sitting home and doing nothing, then that's fine too. So same plan as for the holiday, as for Christmas. Have a plan on what you want to do. When you get to the day, do as much as you can do. And then at the end of the day, don't judge yourself if you didn't do enough, or you don't feel like you did enough, or if you feel like you overdid it. We're navigating this. We're not perfect. We're going to have to figure this out as we go. We don't know what's ahead of us. The only thing we can do, we can't change what happened. We can change what happens next. And so in this case, as New Year's Eve is approaching, that's what's next. What are we going to do differently in order to help us navigate that next day? So really good on that, JJ. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's an unsettling feeling. Yeah, Shelly. Here's what I invite you to do on that, Shelly, to really, sit down and kind of think about what that means for you, to feel like you're waiting on something. And you're right. It may be hard to put words to it right now. But I can tell you that when you figure it out, you're going to know it. And it's going to be like, oh my gosh, but that's okay. When you do figure it out, then ask yourself, what am I going to do about that? And so when the whole key, I think, to some breakthroughs here, especially on the grief journey, is knowing what's keeping you stuck, and then being able to understand maybe where that comes from in your life. And then not only that, but now that you've figured out what has been keeping you stuck, who can help you to walk forward with that clarity? Because that'll start to create some momentum to pull you out of the deep grief. So we got a few more minutes here. I do have a hard stop today at 8. And so, but you guys are really giving some really powerful, powerful responses here. And thank you for staying on for the entire hour here. I really appreciate it. And I hope this is helpful. Please tell me in the chat that this is helpful or not. I'd like to know that, kind of talking about how the day went, if that helps you as you start to think about what's next for New Year's Eve. So Grindle said, actually nothing, because I was surrounded by family and they were positive and upbeat. Perfect, Grindle. I love that. I'm so glad that you had that. And that is exactly that. You don't need to change anything. So we do this naturally, by the way, folks. We actually figure things out even if we don't think we are. We're smarter and we're stronger than we really think we are, because we're humans are really powerful beings, and we're able to self-regulate. We're able to get balanced again. Our brains are working in the background trying to process this grief, which is making us emotionally exhausted. So if you're tired, get some rest. It'll help you if you can. Sometimes it's hard to sleep, but as much rest as you can. Give yourself a break. If you're feeling angry or frustrated, that's your brain telling you it's okay to take a break. I need a break. When I threw that pan across the room, again, I don't condone that. It was just in the moment. But all I'd like to say is that it made me realize in that I needed to deal with some other stuff that I was holding inside. And I did. The next time I sat with my therapist, I shared with her what happened. She's like, where did that come from? And she wasn't accusing me of saying it. She's like, where do you think that comes from? And I told her, I said, I was just so angry that Zoe took her life. And I'm like, maybe I was coming to grips with it. And so we talked about it that day, and it was really helpful. So, so this is great. I'm glad you guys are getting something out of this, and it's been helpful. And, that this is, these resources that are out there. I found early on that resources out there, a lot of resources are basically there to get you to survival. And that's it. Just survive. You'll be fine. I'm not good with that, folks, because survival is not a place to live. It is barely existing. And I know for a lot of folks that are struggling with the loss of a loved one, getting to survival is hard. But there is something to be said about moving through the grief process and having somebody there with you, others there with you who get you, who understand that what you're feeling is normal, and that this is part of the process, so that you don't have to stay stuck. Survival mode long term is stuck, because survival is meant to happen, but it's meant to be temporary. And just like with our physical wounds, just with other times when we're physically sick and we need some time to heal, the brain and your body and your soul need time to heal from the loss of your loved one. And it takes some time, but it also takes some practices that'll aid in that healing. It is talking to others. It is joining groups. It is going to meetups. It is talking to a coach or a therapist or a counselor. It is connecting with friends and family that you trust. It is jumping on calls like this, because it all counts. Every little step is a step forward, and a millimeter of progress is still progress. And obviously, we wish we could just go faster during this. But trust me, every little piece that helps is building that capacity back in your heart. And I'm hoping that each and every one of you gets to a place where you're feeling as though you're honoring your loved one and yourself at the same time, because it's okay to do both. So I thank you all for joining tonight. You guys are wonderful, and thank you so much for these responses. I'm so glad this was helpful for you. And please share this, by the way. Please share this replay with somebody who might need to see this. Maybe the entire series. If you share the series with others, because, we all need help in navigating, and we all need somebody to walk with on this journey. So thank you all again for joining tonight, and let's continue to walk together. I'll see you guys in the future.